G'day. One of the things I love about Maundy Thursday each year is that we get to do worship differently. And I think on that day, probably more than any other day, we remember Jesus affirming the sacredness of life, if you like, the presence and activity of God in the midst of the ordinary. So it seems right to reflect on that together with you from our kitchen, the heart of the home in lots of ways, where the nitty-gritty of food being prepared and shared happens every day. Because on Maundy Thursday, we remember Jesus gathering with his friends and sharing a meal. But before that, he took a bowl and a towel and he washed the feet of his disciples. And we do that in church in lots of different ways. Sometimes I think we may have missed the point when Jesus said, serve each other in the same way that I am serving you now. Sometimes I think in today's world we'd say, don't think that you're too important not to do the things that everybody else takes for granted. So take your turn cleaning the toilet, doing the ironing, doing the washing, cutting the grass, doing those nitty-gritty things that in lots of ways we take for granted in family life and in community life. Don't think you're too important to do any of those. And then as he was sharing that meal with his friends, he takes some bread and wine and he says, whenever you do this, whenever you break bread and share wine together, remember me. And again, I wonder if we've got it right, because we certainly have taken that to heart as a church, Christian communities through the ages. We break bread together and we ask God's blessing on bread and wine, and we do it in memory of Jesus. But I wonder sometimes if Jesus actually meant, remember me every time you have a meal, not just when you go to church and bless bread and wine, but every time you have breakfast and lunch and dinner. So every time you have porridge, remember me. Every time you have a sandwich and a coffee for lunch, remember me. Whenever you have a meal, whether you're by yourself or you're with friends, remember me. I wonder if that would be helpful, so that we suddenly started to understand the activity of God's presence with us in the midst of the everyday, no matter where we are. And then finally, on Maundy Thursday, we have that powerful command. It was almost as though Jesus said, if you haven't got it yet, I give you a new commandment, and it is to love one another. It's as simple and as complicated as that. And that's something for all of us to work on as individuals, as families, as congregations, and as a church. Love one another. God's blessing to you this Maundy Thursday, wherever you are.